Welcome back to Connections in Flight. I'm Erica Paramore.
And I'm Sarah Mizuguchi.
Join us as we have another meaningful conversation about navigating our current life flight. So Sarah, we've got an interesting day today. We've got an interesting topic, an interesting interview, and I'm excited about this one.
I'm super excited about it because when we get to the word, when I think about myself being a guest on the podcast, this is a word that I had thought maybe I would use for my word. Among the many words I've come up with, of course, means a lot to me personally. But we'll get to that in a minute.
Well, and I can't wait to meet her. I've never met her before, so that's always fun to have a conversation with someone new.
She's great, and she'll bring a different energy, to the podcast. So what's in your bag today?
Oh, I did not expect you to ask me that question
girl,
today.
it's you.
My carry-on? Let's see. Gosh, on the spot. Okay. Well, I'm going to share with you one that actually happened today because I say it happened. If I could take this everywhere with me somehow, I would be magical. And you know how you are always talking about like these great beauty products and like how you just spoof and plump and whatever. This is not what I'm not really selling a particular item here, but it's what happens when I use this that I'm going to share. And it is
a vibrator.
Oh, didn't go there.
I'm sorry, I could not resist.
It's close. It's a hairdryer. No, I have to tell you what happens. Okay, so if I'm having a tough day or I'm like thinking about work and I never know, just like with this podcast, what the person walking through the door is going to say next.
Right.
So sometimes after a busy work week or even if something with my kids, I take a shower and I get the blow dryer out. And once I am like 2 minutes in, I have every answer to every problem I've been thinking about all week. I don't know what it is, if it's the white noise, if it's the heat right there on my frontal cortex. But I have started to keep a notepad in my bathroom because it is like, it's like aha moment. Has that ever happened to you?
No, I can't say that it has.
Oh my gosh. It is like, I don't know. I just pay attention. I mean, I have very simple like beauty regime. My hair is pretty straight, doesn't take long, but it is, and the dog loves it. Like when it's like that white noise, and
I think it's almost become like a meditative practice.
I think it is. It absolutely is. But I think that it like calms me down in a different way. I get such clarity, unlike anything. That's how, when we were talking about the title of this podcast.
Yes.
The hairdryer moment.
I do remember that. That's how I do.
It is like ding, 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 ding.
I do remember you telling me I thought of the name of our podcast and all I was a blow dryer. I do remember that.
Isn't that weird? So if I could have that in my carry-on bag, I would take it everywhere. Every time I needed an aha moment answer or whatever, I wish I had access to it. But somehow...
Well, I think it's a testament to personal practices, of things that we do and know where to go for a few moments of solace or meditation or thinking.
Well, I do think it's almost like one of those things we were talking about in some episodes about how it's using every part of your brain. Like I'm kind of going through emotion. I'm doing it, but I don't need like to be focused on it. So it lets my brain wander. Like I do that with gardening too. Like I'm doing something.
Pilates has become for me.
Yeah.
It's become a meditative. It's almost become for my brain more than my body.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Yeah. I love that you keep a notepad and pencil by your hairdryer. That is fantastic.
Well, I mean, it's not like every answer is brilliant. It's like something creative pops out.
Yeah.
And it's
I love it.
Hopefully I didn't jinx it.
Not at all. Well, it's good to be creative. It's good to know where to go to get your answers.
Well, and I would love to hear what other people's hairdryer things are. Like what is it? I remember even my kids resisting baths all the time. And the second I'd put that warm water, we had that little sprayer thing on their heads, they were happy as clams. I'm like, there must be something about that warm water
Maybe something
or
with
heat.
Touch and heat
it's
and
like calming. I mean, you think of all the nerves, and I don't know, but I would love to hear what other people notice about their little aha moment rituals.
Well, I bet we'll hear some aha moments from our guest today, if you'll allow me to introduce her.
Please.
All right. So our guest today is Lauren Chitwood, CEO. Lauren is an entrepreneur and an award-winning brand evangelist. Not content to rest on her laurels, or basically to rest at all, her combination of head in the clouds creativity and boots on the ground guts have earned Lauren a reputation for being nimble, innovative, and above all, a problem solver. So to get to her word of the day, taking all that into account, her word of the day is grit. Well, hey, Lauren.
Hi, guys.
So excited to talk to you.
Oh, well, thanks. From your lips to God's ears, as they say around here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think let's just jump in with the first question and discuss where this goes. Just start off by telling us a little bit about where and how you grew up.
Oh my gosh. So I grew up as a bit of a nomad, to be honest. My dad ran large hospitals and physician groups. I was born in Kansas. I remember riding around my basement, like hiding from tornadoes. I mean, like in a very Kansas kind of way. And then we moved and we were northeast to southeast mostly, and every 2 to 3 years. So it was a lot of change. It was a lot of learning how to pick up and start over and make new friends and get into a community. And I, ended up at UK. And I graduated in 2008, which we all remember the shit hit the fan then. And I had a communications degree and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? I don't want to sell banner ads online. No offense to, to those wanting to sling some banner ads, right? And I said, well, I think that I've got a network and I think that they might still answer the phone when I call. And so I'm going to do events. I did a lot of events in school, and that's really where my first business started. I'm now in my third business. I've sold one prior to this. It's just all about change and movement and, keeping on is kind of my story from the start in a lot of ways.
So let me ask you, you graduated in 2008. You went right into your party planning company, which is how we became friends.
Yes.
So how long did you own that business? From 2008 until when? Can you tell us?
So that business I had until 2016.
2016.
And then we started a company called Oleo Event Group, which was really an experiential agency that worked with mostly big beverage alcohol companies. I was so desperate to reclaim a little bit of life back and, give my children a little bit more of my time and a variety of things, which was really, how Oleo was born. I said, we've got all these skills. I took on a partner at that point, which was an incredible decision. It was a blessing to be able to have a little less emotion in my day-to-day life.
And event planning, I would imagine, is nights and weekends.
It was awful. I always tell people it was the best and the worst business ever.
Right.
Like you can do well. There was so much about that business that really fed me from a creative perspective. Also, you can always put a bow on something and move on to the next, which I have to say, even, in my current professional world, I'm craving that a little bit because it's a lot of maintenance and a lot of just keep pushing the boulder up the hill right now.
Right.
And it was great about events because you always got to finish it up. It ended with a sparkle. And then even if they were making you nuts, they went away. Mm-hmm. Right. So now we're still stuck with people. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When you think of your word grit, when does that first pop up for you?
So I have to tell you, I broke up the rules, but because on grit, I think it's like an amalgamation of 5 words, which meant a lot to me. So I'm totally sneaking on you.
I love it. I love it too.
So, to me, grit is about courage. It's about conscientiousness, endurance, resilience, and excellence. And I think excellence is also, there's excellence and there's perfection and kind of the balance of those two. But I think it's way more excellence than it is perfection, right? Because perfection has an end. And, excellence is really just about a standard. So, when I thought about that word, I was trying to sneak all these other words in.
But I think there's a lot to what you're saying in terms of the research. I mean, this word has been around a lot in my office for years and years and years. And people do think of it a lot of different ways. So I think it feels personal to you, the way that you're using the words. I appreciate that you didn't do anything sneaky. It just gave us more of an insight of what you've
just given us
maybe you want us to see that part of you. Okay, we're going to add that in there. But I think that one of the things that I have a question about for you personally with this, that as you're kind of using these 5 words to kind of be more precise about that, when it comes to the word stubbornness or loyalty, I find a lot of women our age feel like they don't know the difference between the grit and the quit. Am I giving up on a friendship, or do I need to be more loyal? Or, not just in the workplace grit, but it could be with your health. It could be with your athletic goal. I'm just wondering if that was at all something that came up for you about kind of recognizing the difference, because you did have 3 big career changes in a short amount of time and kids and all of that. Did you struggle with the stubbornness versus loyalty, grit versus quit?
I think it's both of those things. You know, I find myself to still be a pretty intuitive person. And I don't know where I learned that skill, or if it really is somehow it was taught or modeled to me in a way that my internal barometer has always been okay, you know, and doesn't mean I've always made all the right decisions, but keeping that kind of true north and letting that internal barometer sort of lead, you know, your next steps, it makes those decisions on when is enough, and, you know, am I really willing to see this through? I'm a gut person.
Right.
I'm just a gut person. And so, you know, there's been a lot of grit, and there's been a lot of grit even with my gut. You know, It's been like, okay, no, there's a there. We're going to keep going.
I'm so into the fact that you became an entrepreneur straight out of college. And I love the party scene that you did and went to many of your fantastic parties. And I can see how you would have gotten to that point in 2016 where you're like, I'm kind of going to close this door.
Yeah.
Before we get to your newest company, which we want to hear all about, I am interested in going back to grit and going back to your second career with Olio. And when did you decide you had given it your grit, but you weren't ready to quit?
Well, I was fortunate actually really to be able to sell that business. And so it was an interesting opportunity. And one of the things that, you know, and we'll talk about how we got to the current gig, it was very clear to me that for better or for worse, I was the entire intellectual capital of that business, you know,
the intellectual capital.
Like it didn't exist without me in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
And key man businesses, they can be very lucrative. There's great things about them, but they really struggle to exist after, you know, that person goes away, right? It'd be the same thing for your therapy practice, right? Like
Sure.
People want to talk to Erica.
It's not just
you
a
know,
job.
they pay for. So, you know, we had an opportunity to divest and to sell some of those assets that we had there. And it just really felt like, and again, this was an intuition thing. Like nobody gets to sell pieces of key man businesses. So why don't you just like step through that open door? And the reality was like, that didn't change my life, like incredible learning process. And I see so much about what I experienced there, what I learned, that has now, you know, enabled me to go, you know, do this current business, which is very transaction based, and, you know, it's kind of living and dying based upon some of those core principles and first learnings that I had in that first business. But it was really like, okay, well, this is interesting. Let's see what's there. And so that was really how I was able to get out of that business.
So you've had 2 pretty awesome flights with 2 businesses, and then you were ready to sell your business in 2018. So you're already selling or letting go of a second business in your early 30s. And then after you landed from that business, had you already jumped on to your next flight? And lead us into your current business, because I think we're all dying to hear more about that.
Absolutely. So in the second business, it was really, we had a lot of fun. So we were doing large experiential activations. Think about the Atlanta Food and Wine Festival. We produced the Atlanta Food and Wine Festival, or big events at huge conferences and things like that. And it was really funny because I looked up, and even though I really felt like this new iteration of these skills that I have was going to be giving my family life back, and, you know, was a positive kind of next step, I realized I was, again, scaling another key man business. And I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah, totally.
I learned that lesson. Why did I do it again?
I love it.
What I also learned was an enormous amount about the beverage business, right? Those were our biggest customers.
Okay.
And, you know, that business was really a pivot. So it was October of 19, and I looked up again, and it was like, oh my gosh, I need an asset that can live outside of Lauren Chitwood. That's all I want, right? Something that has its own inherent value if I go away. Right? Because
I'm fascinated by that. I love this.
Yeah. And so it was in a lucky moment. We, from a cash position, like we were finishing up a high season, and we were getting ready to kind of go into that low season where, you know, you kind of live off your profits and then you lean up a bit. And, you know, we all looked at each other, and we said, it's now or never. Or we're going to we're going to burn this cash, and then we're going to go like, all right, now I got to, like, you know, show up to the bulldog again and get going again. And so we pivoted. So it was me, Abby, and Lexi. So 3 women. Abby was on the founding team of New York City Food and Wine. She actually founded the Atlanta Food and Wine Festival, which she sold in 2016. So that's sort of how we came together in Louisville. And then Lexi, who has a long-standing family history in the bourbon biz. I think they were the 3rd distillery in Kentucky pre-Prohibition. And this call kept coming in from our experiential customers. And they were all going like, hey, I know this is really last minute, but could we get something non-alcoholic that's like kind of cool tomorrow for 1,000 people? And we were like, no, frickin' Folio, it doesn't work that way. Like, and that's really where we said, okay, there's like a there.
I was gonna say, knowing you said that, but secret, you're like, I'm gonna make this happen.
Oh, well, for sure.
You're like, I might need 48 hours, but I will.
Yeah.
Well, and it sounds like there was already momentum, and now the purpose showed up.
We were very transparent as a team that we were on the hamster wheel again, and we wanted to get off the hamster wheel. And I know we've all been there and felt that, right?
Yes.
Which is like, okay, I'm just running. And what am I running for? I don't exactly know. And so we were looking, and I threw a bunch of stuff at the wall. Like, I don't know any successful entrepreneurs that like picked one, went, did it. It was perfect, right? Like there's a lot of testing and iteration and exploration. And
I love that you use that word feel, because I think we expect sometimes in that situation that the idea, the knowledge, the cognitive information will give us the answer. But when you really sink into your body and you feel the intuition, you feel the vibrations, and it gives you a lot of information.
Yes. And I will never forget the 3 of us sitting in the conference room. We sort of talked about it. We sort of set it down for a while. We picked it back up, and I said, guys, it's now or never. And we got to do it. And so we did. Actually, it was after it was on a drive back from a really brutal event. So thank you to that client that put us through the freaking ringer, because we were like, see you never.
Isn't that funny about timing though, and all of that?
Literally the timing, and there was all kinds of other stuff going on in my life too that was just like, holy moly, like this all opened up exactly as it was supposed to. I cleared out clogs of other things. I closed those doors. And then the next day, like it was like.
It's your connected flight. I'm curious about the name, Spiritless. You told us a little bit about what it was about, but can you say more about that?
Spiritless is a distilled non-alcoholic spirits company. And it literally, in October, we started boiling bourbon in our basement.
October of 2019. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So we started literally boiling bourbon in our basement.
It's like the witches of Eastwick. I can just totally see.
Literally, my parents were like, don't forget you failed chemistry in college.
So good.
And I don't know what kind of Walter White stuff you've got going on down there, but can we just keep the grandchildren alive? And, we had this little mini rig. It was good. It kind of set about like waist high. And we went and walked around the backs of distilleries and talked to all the good old boys and their overalls, and they'd like pat their belly and be like, you're going to kill your kids. You can't do this shit in your basement. And we're like, no. It'll be fine. Cross our fingers and our toes. What is really cool and what we learned and knew, and again, this is a little bit of intuition at play here. When we looked at the category, what we saw was, when you turned over those products, water is the first ingredient. And we said, that doesn't feel like a spirit to me. Right? Because they were just taking water and flavor and kind of calling it a day. And, we'd been peddling spirits one way or another, right, for the better part of a decade. And so we said, we need to have a process. That was our intuition. If we want this to look like a spirit and act like a spirit, we also need a process. And so what we've done is we've literally taken this little baby basement still and now brought it up to enormous scale. And we have both a process and an application patent for making non-alcoholic spirits in the U.S., which is just insanely valuable and really cool. But mostly when you turn over that bottle and you hold a bottle of Spiritless, our distillate is the first ingredient. And so, it allows us to, one, make liquids that are just head and shoulders better than the competition, but 2, like tell an authentic spirit story. And, when we start coming back to like, brand evangelist in my bio and some of these details, like that was like, I wanted to hold on to that story. And I also wanted you to understand how the hell to use this stuff. Because new categories take so much education every day, all day long. Whoever will talk to me, I'm like sitting here telling them what Spiritless is about.
Was there fear at that point for you? Like from a science perspective, from did I know what I was really doing? How much did you really trust that part? Not in terms of the success of the business, but the actual science.
We're still
fascinating.
Scared. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm just curious. Grit is like how temporary was that? You know, did you all know? Were any of you scientists?
No.
Okay. Just one.
No.
So,
okay. We're really lucky to be alive. Yeah. I really do mean that.
Was there a point where you were like, it's time to call in
the big guns,
whoever that may be?
Immediately. Yeah. No. Listen, we have had an incredible group of people and advisors.
I'm sure.
And
Yes.
because the world shut down, some of leading chemists and, spirits experts actually became available. And so we found Liz. She was in Switzerland and she wanted to come home. We talked to her and convinced her about what we're doing. And she was like, literally, she's like, I don't actually really know if it's going to work from a science perspective, but like, I'm willing to come home and give it a try. I'm just looking for a way to get home.
Aww.
Yeah. And so we said, all right, she in her little Chicago apartment, had a benchtop still and was helping us do the science of this and figure out how to actually distill it. And so we were, shipping liquid back and forth, sending it to the lab, seeing how it worked. And it was a whole process.
I want to pause you right here because something that we've talked about and something I'm always thinking about is, were you enjoying that process, or were you scared out of your wits, or were you having anxiety, or were you just riding the tide?
I think what you need to know about me is that I am like a perfect tenuous balance between complete blind optimism and complete total anxious meltdown, like all at the same time. Like it is like a perfect pressure thing, right? And I think that it's those two things in perfect unison that like just keep me moving. Right. They just keep me going.
They balance each other out.
They really do. You got to have a little bit of that optimism to stay in the game, but you got to have a little bit of anxiety to keep your edge. That's kind of me. So yes, I also will remind you, I was recently divorced.
Right.
I put all my chips on this table and I said, there's something here, right? Like, we took the piggy bank and said, we're going to do this. And so, yeah, freaking out a little bit.
You were freaking out.
Yeah, it was okay.
Right.
But the world was freaking out around you. I mean, I think it's like, what do we have to lose at this point?
Listen, it was, again, remind you, we could have kind of spent down our coffers and hoped the world was going to open up so we could open up this business that needed to interact with people out in the wild, right? When you look at the reality of what that could have been, I was like, all right, I feel like if we were flipping coins here, I still like where I landed.
Right.
But I love also the timing. I mean, as an outsider looking at what was happening with addiction during COVID, and not that we were knowing that as it was happening, but now looking back, when you look at those statistics, like you're helping that problem too with what you were working on. It's really fascinating.
Yes. And we were 3 moms that were working hard, doing business dinners, wanted to be able to be social, wanted to walk to our neighbor's house and like open something up, but still go get our kids to bed and still get a workout in with Sarah in the morning,
exactly.
And do all the things. And alcohol was an enormous grind. Didn't mean that it was like, the devil. Didn't mean I couldn't have it ever. But we were really looking for that tool ourselves. And so in COVID, and, the days got sort of shorter and longer all at the same time, right? Like you could open something at like 4.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it was a wonderful experience to just see how people were interacting and looking for that ritual in their day to be able to put that capstone. And I think, we could also have a whole other conversation about rituals. I think they're like the cornerstone of life. I think they just, like how you ritualize things is so important.
I'm so inspired how you worded that. I mean, you were basically looking out for so many people, thinking about, I'm not a business person, but going to these dinners and opening wine after wine and going to a friend's house and opening bottle after bottle, and then how that could become detrimental to, and it does become detrimental to so many people, and not to mention calories. It's such an amazing thing that you're offering to everyone.
Well, and from a mental health perspective, I mean, that's what people turn towards because they don't know how to handle things. And
Right.
and even in the world today, it's hard to find a therapist available. So I think giving people who may not have the courage or even the wherewithal to know how to talk about what they might be struggling with and don't want to turn to alcohol. Here's a wonderful thing. I mean, I can see your face light up when you talk about, it's not just what you're putting in your body. It's like the energy you feel about what you're drinking. It sounds like it's very unique.
Absolutely. And, again, like how do we end our workday and how do we start our evening? For many people, it is opening something. And, to be able to say, I'm going to open something, I'm going to put a bow on my day. And this kind of felt like that was the COVID, vibe, right? But to do it and to be able to be proud of the decision you're making about it was really a blessing to a lot of people. Also, let's just talk about the complexity of alcohol in a work setting anymore. Like, you can't have 3 drinks and get loose-lipped. It's just dangerous for all of us. And so, to be able to say, I'm going to sit at a business dinner, especially frankly as a female, right? So I sit at a lot of business dinners with a lot of guys that can drink a whole lot more than me.
Great point.
Right?
Lauren, this is invaluable.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so to be able to say, I'm going to have my first cocktail and then I'm going to switch to Spiritless, but I'm still keeping up. My evening and holding the court at that table does not stop because I'm not having a drink. And we all know what happens when like somebody pulls back. Yeah. You're like, okay, well, I guess we're done.
Oh, good point.
And so to be able to make that change and still, have the control and the composure and, not be drowning.
Right.
Because we've all been there too. It's hard to keep up.
Being able to create a business in your mid-30s, I'm so inspired by this, to be honest. And frankly, and I already told Erica, I'm also so embarrassed. I just had a party. I'm not a daily drinker. I'm not one of those people who actually puts the bow on my day with a drink. But I had a party. I had nothing non-alcoholic. And I'm not going to beat myself up about it because it's just not something I'd ever thought about it. But as I move forward,
Holler at you, girl.
I wish I would have thought to have a mocktail, like a really cool. I mean, is mocktail still a word or is that dated?
So no. So it is still a word. So mocktail has become a tiny bit of a dirty word because it's a little bit associated with fruit juice. A lot of people are calling them non-alcoholic cocktails. And what you'll actually see, which I love, to me, it makes me so proud, is that we're now seeing menus being printed all over the U.S. and there's just an asterisk on the bottom that says any of these drinks can be made non-alcoholic.
I love that. Were you able, even in your personal life, to kind of embrace what was happening at the time, or is it more in hindsight that you really can reflect on that part?
No, I embrace. If you can't be like really excited about what it is that you're doing, then it's too hard.
Right.
I mean, it'll
That's
kill
a great point.
Yeah.
And so you're able to connect to that part, even though the fear is also there. Both things are true. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and again, it's kind of it's in perfect tension and balance.
So when you think of the word grit, do you think of it as a positive connotation or a negative connotation?
I think it is
as a positive.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, but I also feel the grit of it.
This word has really taken a special place for me in the past couple of months. But I like what you said. You said it earlier, like grit. But then if you're just doing something passionate without passion, like what is that? And that to me is the grit versus the grind.
Yes.
The grit is hard, scary. You don't know if you're going to make it. You don't know if you're going to fail. Like maybe where you were in your witch's lair, serving up with your pot, right?
Yeah.
In the summer of 2020.
Yeah.
But you grit because you wanted to do it well. You were doing it with passion. If you'd been doing it because you had to do it, because somebody made you do it, that to me is the grind. Something was lacking. It's the passion and the purpose.
And you were feeling the passion, it seems like, from the way you describe yourself, like with all 5 senses. Like you were feeling the grit in the grit, like in a way that was so real.
Every iteration for an entrepreneur, it comes in waves. Like the grit is like, okay, can we figure out how to make this stuff? Like, are we gonna blow up the house? Okay, now we think we can make it. Can we get it to scale? Okay, how the hell are we gonna finance this business in the middle of COVID when everyone's freaking out and the stock market is stressed? And then and it goes on and on and on and on. And we're out now kind of in this other financially uncertain time. And my current grit experience, or if you've said, Lauren, tell me about capitalizing this business when you're launching, basically the biggest retailer in the world, I would have been like, oh my God, we could raise $1 gazillion and it's all going to be perfect and it'll be so easy.
Then you'd wake up.
And we have about $14 million of outside capital in the business, which I've raised, in the current iteration has been both grit and grind, if I'm just going to be very honest.
Well, and
it's been
I'm
really tough.
And thanks for being honest.
And the honesty is what this is about. And I just, in terms of connecting to other women, what was it like for the 3 of you women to be working together? I mean, that's a unique dynamic in itself. Was there grit just between that collaboration?
So I have such a special, unique, the most perfect relationship I've ever had, to be honest, for the three founders. And I realize that is complex and not typical, right? I mean, there's just lots of personalities when you're doing business in general. I think some things that made us really successful as a trio, which is we knew each other like the back of each other's hands before we started this business. And we'd work together professionally. So there were no surprises. Like they knew where my detail orientation was, which I'll, teaser, might actually have a pretty low detail orientation in the grand scheme of things. Like I have a big vision and then somebody else can figure out how to get it done. But like, I'm more like really running for the big idea. There were no secrets there. We have our 3 lanes, know that none of us could do each other's job. And we would also just be like royally screwed.
There's trust.
There's so much trust. And there's also just a lot of respect.
Yeah.
We really respect each other. It is special.
That in itself is incredible.
Yeah.
You don't see that very often.
It's really special. And, even going through hard times, I've had even people tell me, we've made it through this hump, which is like, are we going to be able to capitalize this business again or not? And we've gotten to do it. But there was a time where we weren't so sure what was going to happen because the markets have frozen. And, that's a time where, especially as founders, like it'll make you or break you. The reality is that this is the time that people start picking and they want to get at each other, and we are so united and
there's security.
You're so secure in your founding group that like it just gives me so much confidence.
Who has been your biggest supporter?
I have lots of people for lots of different things. I don't think you can ever have one person to do all the things, right?
Who might be the least expected?
Sarah, you go there, don't you?
Who's there for you that you just didn't see coming?
Oh, well, my daughter. I know that she's 11. She's really proud of me
Lauren.
in like the most genuine way. And like if she sees Spiritless out, she'll call me on the phone and she'll be like, Mom, I saw it today. Or like, I mean, I have the most hilarious pictures of like her like doing these poses where I'm like, oh my God, if this ever hits the internet, I'm literally, your dad's going to kill me. But she is so proud of me. And like, that's such a motivator, just to know that they're watching. And,
they're watching.
Whether I win or lose, like she remembers my mom made this, and like that she's really proud of me. So
when she feels her own grit, she will remember that part too.
Have you had some haters?
Well, like, are we walking? Yeah. I mean,
how do you deal with that?
I don't know. I don't really. I think I used to feel it a whole lot more than I feel it now. And this is an interesting community, and I think being a big fish in a small pond in some ways is really beneficial for some things, and then in other ways, people are sometimes not as optimistic as you are. But
well, and I think you also have that trust in the purpose. Like I think that must ground you when the haters are throwing anything negative. Like it's bigger than that.
Yeah, I always just say, like, my life speaks for itself. I live and love to encourage people and help. And it makes me, like, really excited to do even just this and connections, like, right, makes the world go round.
It's absolutely amazing. So amazing, proud to know you as a friend.
Oh, likewise.
For sure.
Thanks,
for sure.
ladies. I really appreciate it.
And do you feel like there's a downside to being this feisty?
Or when is grit too much?
Right.
Like how do you read when grit gets past the threshold of productive?
People that do the things like I do, you put your family through a lot, right? Like you've got a mom that's on the computer again after you go to bed and she's keeping you up at night because she's too loud on Zoom. Or when my kids go back to their dad's house, usually I have to catch an early flight because that's my time that I've get to be on the road and doing work for Spiritless. And so like, I'm not there to kiss them goodbye that morning that they leave. Like usually there's a grandparent there. Like there's a little tiny things that, as a mom, you worry about, is there some sort of like larger collateral damage of me being so driven?
Thank you for saying that. I feel like that is so helpful for so many people. I mean, I think that is a women raising children, and
it's a woman thing.
Yeah,
and having a profession and all of that. It is. I really appreciate you going there with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably my biggest worry. That's when I'm like, it's not the grit for me.
Yep.
I don't worry about me. Is this pressure cooker that makes me get up and get so excited and light up from the inside. Like, how does that affect the people around me? Right. And that's probably the biggest worry that I have about it.
You connect all cylinders with the people that come into your life that matter. And I think that, I don't mean matter in terms of worth, but like my guess is that you connect to your daughter in these meaningful ways with all your five senses in ways that it's not about the time. It's really about the connection. See them walk through a door and connect with your eyes with a smile.
Yeah. Yes. And, and maybe it's I don't know where I heard this stat, right? And you can tell me as a therapist if this is right or wrong.
No pressure.
But that and I just tell myself it over and over again because I pray that it's freaking true. But like a kid really just needs like 7 minutes of your pure, unadulterated focus.
Oh, I never heard this.
And listen, I hope they get more than that.
And eye contact.
Yep. And I really do
it matters.
Intentionally
100%.
do that. Like I know when they're going to hit the back door with the nanny, I get off or pause whatever call I'm on. I like clap my hands. I make them run to me still, like I smother them until they tell me to stop kissing. Like
that's why she's proud of you.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily an act. It really, I genuinely want that too. And like we still lay in bed every night. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I
it's
just
the connection.
With one of them in the
I
bed.
mean, and is it a little bit of one of the oldest things in the world? I mean, quality. If I think about being with somebody, I'd rather be with them smaller amounts of time and then be their true, happy, passionate selves than be with them all day. I mean,
and be disconnected.
You're feeling yourself and you're feeling them.
So true.
I mean,
and it is those little everyday moments that are quality. Helping them with their backpack, putting that on. It's not the big Disney World trips, although those are wonderful.
And I try, and there are many ways that I'm profoundly imperfect about it, right?
Sure.
And, when shit hits the fan and I know
it's
that
messy.
they can feel me go somewhere else and like I'm on my phone and I'm like trying not to, either cry or scream or something, because we all have those moments.
Yes.
And they happen, unfortunately now, like real time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at this, world that we live in now. I know that they feel that energy too, and I really try to segment it, but
it's okay for them to see you feel the negative emotions too. It's like if they never saw that, how would they make sense of that when they experience this feeling?
Sure.
well, let me ask you this, Lauren. Who inspired you as a child?
I had lots of people inspire me, but I grew up in a household that was probably very, like I'm a very kind of similar blend of my parents, right? Like my dad was the serious, focused workhorse. And my mom still works, actually. We keep trying to get her to retire. And she goes like, what am I going to do? Hang out with him all day? I'm like, oh, good point.
Classic.
Yeah. But she was just profoundly optimistic. You know what I mean? Like, it was all good. Like, let's, I got it. She's like, she was a helper and a doer. And so I had that modeled for me in such a real way. And also they went through major adversity. We moved a lot. And it was always like, okay, well, we'll restart. It's all good. And like she showed me that, over and over and over again. And so I think that, that impacted me a lot. And, I also just I've had great mentors. I think that, that is one of the things, if we were to really dive into what do I think is just missing for so many of us, is just true mentorship. It happens so naturally with men.
Wow.
Right? Like
So
they
true.
get on this track and they find a mentor. People professionally say you have to, it's like on their agenda list. Get a mentor in finance or blah, 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 right? All those things. That is something that is not part of a woman's to-do list.
It's in that Beyonce song. I think it's Flawless.
Is
like
it?
we
I don't know.
don't see women, we see women as competitors.
Yes.
We can't see women. It's harder for us. I mean, I admit it.
Yeah.
There's something about it. I totally agree with you.
Well, we're fighting our own fight so hard sometimes to stop and think, how can I help someone else come up the ladder when I don't even know if I'm doing it right? I mean,
there's something about that.
But the mentors, that's a great
I've
point.
never heard somebody put that into words. Hearing you say that, it resonates.
Yeah, I've been really lucky, and I've had some incredible mentors, and I think that it wasn't always a formal process, and frankly, they were often my senior in a big way, right? Like, even people my parents' age, but I've had some really incredible mentors, and I also had somebody at a coach sit down. It was after I sold my first business, kind of thinking about my second, talking about like, what am I going to be when I grow up? And, he told me, he said, Lauren, you need to put together a personal board of directors, and you need to have people that you're talking to all the time about, about all of these things, business, how are you cultivating
Young
your
girls
learning?
need to hear this over and over.
Absolutely.
And over.
And I
again.
love like the thought of your radar of who you connect to through the process. There's got to be trust,
100%.
right? And respect.
Yes, both of those. I think you also just have to have the balls to ask, or
Yeah.
maybe the
Oh,
the
good
golden
point.
ovaries, right? Sorry, I mean,
Don't say sorry. That's what this is.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
I'm hashtagging that.
but it's I think it's really important to pursue those relationships. And I think as women, sometimes you get scared to say, hey, either male or female, right? I'm really looking for a mentor. I've admired you for a while. Would you be willing to have lunch with me once a quarter and get to know me a little bit?
We don't want to be a burden.
We don't want to be a burden. We don't want to shrink, right? And I still find myself being like, people that are huge investors in my business that want nothing more than to make sure we're freaking successful.
Right.
I'm like, oh, should I call them? I don't know. I don't.
I wouldn't have
Freaking
thought
yes.
that. That's like really refreshing to hear of all the things you've talked about with the tenacity and the perseverance, that you have that also, like that.
I'm telling you, I have both every single day.
Thank you for saying that.
I have both.
If you didn't have it, I wonder, that might make you, I don't know what, Erica, like if you don't have that
Have
must,
which part?
just maybe the ability to, I don't know if respect is the right word, but